Wow, they got spanked by the Mets.
Beat them by 30, we lose by 23. Whatever. It's a mess. The ship be sinking.
Please join us in a salute to the flag. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2014 to the News Record and Star Ledger in December 2013, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier? Here. Ms. Leventhal?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, common known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire this governing body to comply with the provisions of this Act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in a formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observations on the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 21st meeting of the Maplewood Township Committee. We know it's snowing out there, and you may be wondering why we're meeting anyway. This wasn't a publicized meeting, and there are some items on our agenda that are very timely, and we have to act on them. I am going to recommend to the Township Committee that we table the ordinance on final passage so that we can have if anyone wants to speak on that, they'll be able to speak on that at the February 4th meeting. And then the other two ordinances that we'll introduce today, we'll be able to have a public hearing at the February 4th meeting. But the most important thing is we have some resolutions here. One is paying the bills and claims, another is making some budget transfers, and unless we make those approvals, nothing can happen there. And we've made certain commitments of paying, and we have to follow those through. Additionally, we have some appointments, community development block grant application. We're going to have a hearing on that. We're going to be hiring some experts for a major tax appeal. We have a contract that we want to award to start work on 60 Woodland, and then lastly we have a republishing of the redevelopment plan for the PSE&G site. And I'm going to, when we get to the consent agenda, Mr. Desiderio, I'm going to ask you if you would explain why we have to republish the plan. So. This meeting will be very short, but in the end we thought we would hold it at this time. This is the time people expect it. We publicized that it will be aired on TV, and we're going to go through this as quickly as possible. We do not have the introduction of our alternate prosecutor. We'll do that in another meeting. There's no one from the public here. So we'll move to, we're not going to have our presentation on the 2014 Maple Woodstock. That will also be done on February 4th so that people can hear the request. They're going to request to be able to sell beer and wine there. And in case anyone wants to make a comment, that will be reserved for February 4th. We will have the public hearing on the funding for the Community Development Block Grant. This is our second. I'm going to ask Ms. DePalma to come up to explain. This is also timely because we have to file our application, we have to show that we've had the required public meetings.
Hi, good evening. Annette De Palma. Since the first hearing on this grant, just as a reminder, the township has applied for about $126,000 in funding from the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is HUD money that's funneled through the state and then ultimately through the county. It's a separate program. The money is primarily available to make upgrades both in lower and moderate income neighborhoods, as well as to bring public facilities in compliance with the ADA. Maplewood's application this year was for about $126,000. We applied for the money to install an ADA compliant restroom in the Hilton Library and also to construct an ADA compliant ramp. Last week, we have a little wrinkle in this now. Last week, Mr. Malavasi, Tom Malavasi and I, he's the township engineer, met with the county. And they love the project, they want to fund it, et cetera, et cetera. They are taking an excessively constrained, in my opinion, reading of the HUD regs in that they are, although they love the project, they are not going to be funding that portion of it that requests money to build the ramp. It's about $20,000, 17.5% of the money we applied for. And the reason is that the money is not available to correct mistakes or deficiencies in ADA improvements. So I pointed out that to the extent that what is there now, there being the ramp outside the library, was a purposeful act at all, it was constructed in compliance with the then existing guidelines. And they kind of weren't buying that. Said, no, it was a mistake. Well, in fact, it wasn't. And I said, it may have been something as simple as the Department of Public Works had a yard of concrete left, and the then business administrator may have said, just, go pour it and level it out. In any case, they are sympathetic to the situation because apparently there are a number of other municipalities asking for money for similar reasons. So they invited us to help them make their case to HUD because they do want to fund this in its entirety, and they do agree with our reasoning. But for reasons related to audits and the like, they are taking a restrictive reading at this point, which I think is very reasonable on their part. So we're going to keep making the pitch for this.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? Anyone want to speak on this? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you, and I believe that meets the requirements.
And I'm leaving the sign-in sheet.
We have a sign-in sheet that's going around
You have
already.
one going around? Perfect. If I could just ask that you leave it with Ms. Fritzen, the township
Yep.
clerk? Thank you.
Okay. All right, we have an ordinance on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, ordinance on final passage 2740-14. It's an ordinance to designate the building at 60 Woodland Road as a local historic landmark. This ordinance will designate the building at 60 Woodland Road as a local historic landmark.
There may be people in the public, from the public that want to speak on this, so I would suggest that we table this to our February 4th meeting and have the another hearing and final consideration at that time.
We have to move to continue? We don't have to republish it, do we?
No.
We have to vote on that?
Yes. You have to move to table it till the February 4th meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. We have introduction of a new ordinance.
Yes, Mayor, introduction to new ordinance, ordinance number 2741-14, is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will prohibit the parking of commercial vehicles, liveries, and omnibus on Elmwood Avenue between the Irvington Town Line and Brookwood Drive.
We get a motion to introduce this, Ms. Larrier?
Mr. Mayor, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, and a hearing to be held on February 4th.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. And we have another introduction of a new ordinance.
Ordinance number 2742-14 is an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will restrict parking on Clinton Avenue at certain times and on certain days.
Chair, I move the passage of this ordinance on first reading, its publication according to law in the Maplewood South Orange News Record, with a hearing to be held on February 4th, 2014.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll. Oh, sorry.
I'm trying to recall, there was a, in terms of the specific end point for where this restriction is? That's been, that's been incorporated, okay.
What the town engineer went up and measured, so it is 670 feet west of Ridgewood.
Okay. I just want to make sure that wasn't, okay.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Now, both of these ordinances will be heard on final. They'll be published. In order to be published in the news record next week, they have to be to the news record this Friday, correct?
They were already published. They'll be in the news record this Thursday coming.
Okay. Right. And then they'll meet the statutory requirements for us to consider them on the 4th of February.
No problem. And I was going to indicate that I would be sending a notification to the homeowners on both streets, which
Right.
we
Okay.
customarily do.
Here.
Which one? No. No. No, yes. I want to, I do want you to speak, we don't have any discussion on this, but I do want you to speak about publicizing the redevelopment plan for the PSE&G site, and why we have to do that. And make sure your mic works.
Yeah, the one that works, yeah. Okay.
It's Joe's.
This came up because Mr. Bratt, who is special engineer to the planning board and to the Board of Adjustment, is charged with amendments to the zoning regulations. And part of his process is to go through them and to make sure that everything is in order. So on December 17th, 2013, the Township Committee passed ordinance number 2738-13. At that time, the redevelopment plan for the PSE&G site had been reviewed by the Planning Board, which had made certain recommended changes. Those recommended changes were adopted by the Township Committee. I believe Mr. Ryan and the Mayor raised those issues, and they were amendments. Those recommended changes were adopted by the Township Committee. Unfortunately, our expert had not sent the correct copy of the redevelopment plan to be published with the ordinance. So consequently, when Mrs. Fritzen sent the final ordinance to the newspaper for publication, it incorporated an earlier version of the plan and not the one that was amended at the Township Committee meeting on that night. So consequently, it was the wrong version was published. Mr. Bratt realized that, brought it to my attention. I, in turn, talked to our planner, and we now have the correct version. That is the version that the governing body passed. So there's not an issue of what the governing body passed. It clearly passed what it wanted to pass. What happened simply was that the publication was, in fact, just not the version that had been passed. So in order to address this and make sure there was no confusion, it was my opinion that I would present to you a resolution that basically laid out what the facts were involving this, and then attached to it what is in fact the correct version of the redevelopment plan. And the way that is distinguished is that there are 3 asterisks next to the date December 17th, 2013. And that's how we determined that there would be no confusion and that this, in fact, was the final passed and adopted redevelopment plan for that site. And Mr. Bratt has now gotten that version and confirms that that is consistent with what the planning board recommended and what the governing body approved. So this is effectively a ministerial change.
And is there such a term as clerical inadvertence?
Pardon me?
Clerical inadvertence?
Well, when I said clerical inadvertence, it was effectively that the planner had not sent the final version, final adopted version.
Okay. Yes.
Where are the three asterisks?
On the first page, next to the date, December 17th.
Correct. It's not me. There's a clerical inadvertence.
Well, this is the version that I circulated to everybody.
The electronic copy
And
that
it
we
should
got?
be, and it should have been the version that was circulated to the governing body with the agenda.
Well,
I do have
Do
it
you
at
have,
home, but it's not in the packet.
do you have a date of 1/15/14 on the top corner?
With one asterisk circled
That's,
in Ms. Fritzen's
that's
handwriting.
my note, that I have the correct one.
Okay.
Well, but does not have three
We are
asterisks.
going to publish,
The
we are
correct
going to
version.
publish the correct version, and that is the one that says December 17th, 2013, and has 3 asterisks next
Right,
to it.
that's the one that you sent electronically to all the members of the
That is
township committee.
absolutely correct.
Okay.
And
Yes,
that is
and
the
I do
final
have it, but-
adopted version.
So the one in here is
not.
Ms. Fritzen's, this has a different coding on it. Ms. Fritzen said that's her coding. That's the correct one, though, right?
You know, I'm gonna check that again with Mr. Desiderio, but that's my coding, that's the one.
Okay. Mr. Desiderio, does this resolution change the ordinance or anything?
No. All this does is republish the correct version of the plan, and it directs the clerk to take this version and to attach it to the ordinance of December 17th, 2013.
So the ordinance we passed on December 17th stays as is?
Correct.
Anyone have any questions for on any other items of the consent agenda?
No. I move for the adoption of the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, any public comment? No one's here. Construction code official, we received that. Any administrative reports, Mr. Manning?
Yes, I beg your pardon. I have 3 items. The first concerns the former Women's Club, currently we're calling it 60W. We had 2 meetings. One was to discuss the types of activities and how we would partner with other people, which I think Mr. Ryan is going to address in his comments. My comments are about the second meeting, which was to talk about how we can make the place usable under the current codes. So we had a meeting with the construction official, the fire department, the engineer, the assistant engineer, myself, recreation, right on the premises, and we went over all of the items that needed to be incorporated into either Phase 1 or Phase 2 of the renovation projects in order to use the building. The 3rd floor of the building, until we really get either an outside and a different kind of setup in terms of the stairs, either an outside stair or an elevator, will not be used. So we will be using the main level and the auditorium level for the immediate future. Phase 1, you're awarding tonight, which has to do with some bathrooms and some cleaning up of some things. Phase 2, the plans and specifications are being developed based on the meeting that we had last Friday with all parties involved. We're looking to have full operations on the auditorium and the first level by mid-spring. 3rd floor, as I said, will be closed off until future renovations allow it to be used. Only local programming and activities, meaning those put on by the Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs or those they allow to use with other people to use within the building will be put on at this particular point in time there. Will not be open to weddings or, social functions until we've gone through at least phase 2. So I wanted to report on that so that you know the most current status of the building, and we are moving forward, and they are already starting to get set up, although we're just waiting to sit down with a pre-construction meeting to make sure the timing, we get that kind of matching. That was that. The second thing is Saturday, this coming Saturday, we have our budget hearing right here in this room, 9 a.m. And the third item was our website. If you want to get the news from the source, go to www.maplewoodnj.org. Follow us on Facebook and like us on Twitter? No, like us on Facebook.
Like us on Facebook,
follow us on Twitter. Okay, you can see today it was very helpful. We got a lot of messages out to people: the jitney, the overnight parking, snow issues, etc., closings of buildings, what have you.
Great.
And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Manning? Mrs. Desiderio? Ms. Fritzen?
No report.
Okay. Elected officials, Mr. Ryan, we were told you have a report.
Just two quick items. At our last meeting, Mr. Manning brought up the issue that we had gone out to bid for partners to help manage Women's Club for us, and recommended that we go ahead and reject those bids. Between the last meeting and this moment, we had a meeting of the Township Committee's Cultural Affairs Subcommittee to discuss this matter, and the committee's recommendation is to formally take the action that Mr. Manning recommended and reject the bids and proceed with having the Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs be responsible for managing the Women's Club building and for programming it. We've directed Mr. Knudsen and Mr. Fishman to come back with some more detailed proposals and to basically take charge of it and start running with it. So that's the committee's recommendation.
Why don't you make that in a motion?
I'd like to move that we adopt the Cultural Affairs Committee's recommendation on rejecting the bids and proceeding with assigning the management of the building's responsibility to the Department of Recreation and Cultural Affairs.
We get a second. Okay, any discussion? Questions?
The suggestions, or, information that was suggested in the proposals, will that in any way inform the thought process of the Recreation Committee in terms of the activities that they'll, I'm not necessarily saying formally, but I'm not sure how I'm asking the question, to be honest, but it will...
That's, your question's right on point, and I think the answer is yes.
Okay.
The answer is that my expectation is that the department is going to reach out to both of the folks who bid and hope that they'll participate in doing programming in the building along with other folks that they'll reach out to.
Okay, all right, good.
Any other questions or comments? Call the roll on that recommendation.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mrs. Larrier?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes.
And the other thing I'd like to report is that the several neighborhood associations hosted an information meeting about the PSE&G development at the police headquarters, police and court building, and it was basically attended by and for the most part run by the designated developer for the PSE&G property. They had a very nice, frank discussion. Open discussion. They put some renderings up, and freewheeling discussion where they just took questions from the audience. I thought that the plans were quite well received. I thought the meeting went extremely well, and I think it's a real credit to the neighborhood associations for putting together such a good and informative meeting. The folks from the PSE&G developer told me that they'd already submitted all their plans. The plans are in the hands of our consulting engineer, and it is, there's a chance that they'll have a first hearing before the planning board in February.
Okay. Anyone else have any other announcements?
I don't know if you were going one by one.
No, just whoever has them.
Mr. Brownlee? Or
Mr. Brownlee. Mr. Brownlee, reports?
Yes, actually, along with my co-host, Ms. Larry, we'll be convening our next gathering of neighborhood association leaders, the Maplewood Community Action Program, next Monday, the 27th, at the Hilton, at the main branch of the library from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock p.m. So we are looking forward to getting together with the neighborhood association leaders in that meeting. That's it, my report.
Did you just refer to Mrs. Larrier as your co-host? I like it.
Well, do you prefer a different title?
I like it.
I'm sorry.
Co-host. I like it.
Mrs. Larry, do you have anything to report?
Only that I am in receipt of this document from the FDIC and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's called Money Smarts for Older Adults. It's a document that basically outlines a lot of the frauds, and it helps It is very informational. I have copies here. It is on PDF at the FDIC, and I will be giving, I guess, Caesar, or I'll give it to you. And I will also be trying to get copies of this put in the libraries.
Great.
Thank you.
I have no report.
I have no report. Can we get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.
28.